Hello and welcome to another Overlord lore video, and today we are going to take a look at a rather interesting question, namely whether or not Ainz Ooal Gown is evil. And this was one of the very first videos I originally made almost 4 years ago, and therefore I think it is time for a little more complete remake. But before we're going to dive deeper into this question, I'm going to thank my Patreons for supporting this channel, as well as all users of the YouTube thanks function who made one-time donations. Now with that said, we have to also acknowledge that there's, at least from my perspective, no truly universal evil. But it is a question of perspective, because from our own perspective a certain thing can be unquestionably good, while from another perspective it can be unquestionable evil. For example, the question whether or not it is okay to take Kevin's toys and give it to Marvin depends on whether or not it is Kevin or Marvin you are asking for an assessment. Sometimes Marvin and Kevin agree that taking things from others is bad. But most of the time, the question what benefits someone is the basis for the moral framework. And this also applies to societies at large. If, for example, this was a tribal raider group, the answer would be likely no, it is still wrong. But not because it is wrong to take things from others, but because they were stealing from their own tribe instead of other tribes. Or maybe the answer is yes, because that's how you train to be a good raider, and not let other people steal stuff from you. So overall, it's a question of different layers of perspectives we are going to take a look at. And also these perspectives can change. For example, if Kevin and Marvin repeatedly get their toys stolen, then they might come to the conclusion that stealing in general is a moral evil, because it makes people feel bad. And now that they can emphasize with the victims of theft, they are not going to be raiders anymore. And in order to get finally to the core question of this video, I'd say that from our own perspective, Ainz Ooal Gown is undoubtedly evil, in a pragmatic way. He could just have said no to all of the violence that has happened in his name, by just clarifying that there was a big misunderstanding. But he didn't. Because, and I have to stress this again, it could make his NPCs sad. It could make them sad, which in turn might make Ainz ashamed. And this is something that Ainz should have to bear from our perspective, in order to prevent the death of millions of people. But within Ainz Ooal Gown's own moral framework, he thinks that bringing glory to the memory of his friends and happiness to his NPCs by any means necessary is still justified. As well as, for example, taking cruel and excessive revenge at the people who attacked Child here, even though Ainz doesn't see himself as evil, but as someone who was forced into make the best out of a situation at hand. And since he's unable to feel pity or empathy for his victims, even though he acknowledges that they are living, breathing, thinking beings with their own hopes, dreams and feelings, he, while extremely evil from our perspective, is just frankly uncomfortable with the situation from his very own. Furthermore, and this is also quite obvious, people and nations who had been forcefully conquered will also see him as very, very evil, especially the Quagoa, and extra especially the few surviving people of the second war between the Sorcerer Kingdom and the Kingdom of Riestais. Though, from the perspective of the quote-unquote freed demi-humans of the Abelian Hills, he is not evil, but a liberator from the yoke of Yaldabaoth. And the same goes for Nea, and pretty much the entirety of the Northern Holy Kingdom. And he will be seen as a good guy as long as no one learns that Yaldabaoth, or rather Demiurge, has worked for Ainz, and that Ainz could have at any point stopped every cruel thing happening the Demon Emperor did. And while currently many in the human population, despite all of the great material and physical well-beings they now have received, are still hating and fearing the undead king, their children and especially their grandchildren will have a very different perspective, because they didn't experience the terror that was the massacre of the Cuts Plain, because they didn't saw it, and they didn't perceive and have been told firsthand how Ainz Ooal Gown's pets rampaged through the soldiers of the kingdom, which again were forcefully conscripted peasants who just wanted to go home in order to collect the harvest. From them it will be just a distant echo from the past, almost completely drowned out by the juvenile sound present when people cheer, laugh, drink and have a good time in the Sorcerer Kingdom that is now materially very, very well off, and will only increase its wealth and the living standard of its citizens. Also, the population, once Nea Baraya becomes more prominent, will likely become very, very much indoctrinated that the Sorcerer King is justice and that weakness is a sin. So they, in the sense of their grandchildren, might even believe that the massacre of the Cuts Plain was not only not evil, but in fact a moral good, because weakness is a sin, and the sinners have been punished justly. And even those who don't believe in justice and the preachings of Nea Baraya will still in the back of their mind acknowledge that they don't want to lose the undead king, because they have much more to gain from being a citizen in the Sorcerer Kingdom than overthrowing the Sorcerer King, if this was possible at all, only to form a miserable government like that of the Kingdom of Rhea's Ties. And thus even they will justify why Ainz had to do what he did. For example, if being questioned about all of the horrible things Ainz Ooal Gown had done, they will just say, well, it was war. The Kingdom of Rhea's Ties was a backwater. The kingdom had attacked the grain supply of the then recently liberated Holy Kingdom, that was in desperate need for any aid, in order to recover from the Demon Emperor's rampage. And during the last 50 years, all of the minor wars and countless violent crimes might have killed more people than one swift and decisive war that brought lasting peace. This is then something that will inform the moral mindset of the people, and even the evil things Ainz Ooal Gown has done, and that are evil from our own perspective, would be then seen as a net benefit, and therefore as harsh but still good deeds. The more distant the evil acts Ainz has committed will become, the more justified and then just and finally good they will seem. And that's pretty much my broader take on this question, and now I'm interested in your opinion about this, especially on this rather complex topic of changing morality. So again, please let me know all about it down in the comment section. And with that said, I say thank you very much for watching, and special thanks to Bad Guy Yee, Ben C, Chrissy, Crowley0221, Sia, Death is Mercy, Deathless Dragonlord, Dystopia, Dystopia II, Feral Shivan, Guy with That Head, Hector Marino, Hoss, Huster, Jacob G, Jana B, Jason, Chromius, Legendarius, Lelouch Britannia with a Mustache, Lexus Fox, Lord Nishikian Rai, Lord Touch Me, Merovec, Mr. Shoes, Mr. Tweaker, Michael R, Michael Y, O'Kill, Overlord General Gasper, Paddy Pantum, Personage, Primus 11, Shadow Lightning Wolf, Shrine Keeper, Texas Deer, The Orc Warboss, Rock Ed Smasher, T.E. Wang, Vash Hawkeye, Vegito27, Venture Fanatic, Wilhelm, and Sonnegon. Thanks guys. Anyway, have a nice day, and I hope to see you all again soon on my next video.